Hi, this is John Solari. We're back with part two, and this time we're going to try to get away from the meals and talk a little bit about the work. And I want you to once again, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Dina Morrone. Dina Morrone.
Dina Morrone.
And Anthony Gruppuso.
And Anthony Gruppuso. And we were talking before, which is really great. But what I'd like to know is why, Dina, did you become in this business?
Wow, that's great. Well, as I mentioned in part one, I grew up in this Italian family in Canada. My parents still don't speak English well. And my grandfather was one of these guys that used to dress up. He used to put on my grandmother's dress, and he used to put on her hat and get like a pail and, put on some weird stuff, and he'd start joking. And so we would all laugh, and we'd all play and have games and sing and perform. It was always about performing. So it always just became, this is what we do for fun. It never became, this is actually a career or a job. So I was involved in this my entire life. I was a figure skater, I was always a performer, and then when it came time to go to school, I had to go to school and become something, like I had to become something. It was never, oh, I'm just going to go and perform. And especially growing up in a very small town in Canada, I really wasn't exposed to it. So when I got out of university, I graduated in fashion design, I just said, I'm going to just be a performer, that's what I want to do, and that's when I started taking my classes and committing to it, and starting to learn that this was something that I could do, and that it could be my life, and that it could be a career, and that's basically what happened, and I've been doing it ever since.
Did you study? Where did you study?
I did. I studied in Canada at several places and several studios, and then from there I moved to Los Angeles, and I studied for quite some time in a place that isn't there anymore called the Loft Studio with Bill Traylor and Peggy Fury.
Peggy Fury, yes.
Yes.
She was a member of the Actors Studio.
That's right, and I think her husband may have been.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
like
Peggy was really,
yeah,
I knew Peggy.
I came out here, I was like 21, and I studied with them. I was green, I had no idea. And so, and then after that I went to Europe. I lived in Italy for many years, and I met Susan Strasberg, who we talked about, I think, the last time.
Right.
And Susan was my mentor, and so I studied under Susan Strasberg for quite some time, and she was really a big, force and inspiration in my life. And the whole time just studying and whatever, and I do a lot of voiceover, so it's been a whole series of things. But when I moved to Los Angeles, I would tell these stories about Italy. Like, oh, I met Fellini, and then he said this, and then I would tell the story about that, and people were like, do you perform? Do you do a one-person show? And I just thought, no, this is my life. And then I started seeing all these one-person shows, and I thought, why don't you have a one-person show? And that's how I started working on one-person shows, and now that's sort of my thing.
Now, up until you met Susan Strasberg,
Yes.
the late
Susan. Great Susan.
You're thinking about acting. Was there a change, or did you view it in a different way?
It was mostly method acting. Everywhere I studied was in Toronto with the different instructors in the different studios I was at. It was basically method acting from where I started. And
what is method acting to you?
Well, method acting to me has always been really immersing myself in every aspect of this character's life. It's really feeling heart and soul, everything that this person feels, and not just what I think this person feels. Not just, oh, I'm going to do it like this because this looks good. Yeah. It's more about feeling what this person would be feeling. And so sometimes to me it was difficult when I was studying, because there were a lot of times I didn't want to go to places. I did not want to go to the places, dark places, that people had to go to, or characters had to go to, and that's part of it. And the other thing that to me is, there's a whole when I look at people from method, there's a whole naturalness to it. It seems like it's natural. It may not be, but it just feels really natural. It's not pushed. It's not fake. It's very real and organic.
Well, a lot of it, what you're saying, is because if I were this character, what would I do?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of what method is. When you were talking about these feelings,
Yeah.
and Martin Landau, we came up with our pain and those really dark things in our life that happen are gold for an actor.
Well, growing up, I'm sure with Anthony's show, when you see it, you'll be able to relate to it. Growing up, at least in my Italian family, there was so much pain. There was so much going on, and there was so much to be ashamed of, as Anthony mentioned early on about the music. I just feel that just from my generation growing up, how I did, there was so much to be ashamed of, but it was so rich. When I got older and I was in Italy, I met this actor, and he was a guy from New York. He was an Italian-American living in New York, became a good friend, and he would listen to my stories about growing up in Canada with my parents, and he said, "Man, you've got so much culture. You've got so much you can draw upon. You've got so much that you can," and I was thinking, wow, I never knew I could tap into that,
Right.
You never thought that one day you would use this stuff when you were growing up in this, just a quick story. I grew up in very English-speaking Canada, so the Italians had very racist, horrible names, and I was called every horrible name in the book, and it was not fun. So, and I think other cultures can relate to it. So, but anyway, growing up, but I really wanted to be a figure skater, and there was nobody in my family who knew anything about skating or figure skating, especially because in Calabria, where they have olives and lemons, there are no skating rinks. You know what I mean?
No ice.
It was but for some reason, I don't know how. I woke up. I was 5. I want to be a figure skater. I want to be on the ice in the ice capades. I want to be. My parents didn't get any of it. They were just happy to have their blue-collar job, and that was it. But I just had to be a figure skater. So my grandfather and my father took me to the store and bought me skates. And they put me on the rink, and I was so embarrassed because there were English kids skating around, and my father and my grandfather, I start crying now because if I think about it, they were yelling at me to do something, to move, like I was just like paralyzed because I was embarrassed that I couldn't do it. And they were like, "Fai qualcosa, ma vedi, or else get off the ice." And I was like, oh, God, and then these kids were skating around me, calling me WAP, and, hey, spaghetti blender, and hey, is that your grandpa, It was horrible, and that's like, so you're just like, oh, I'm just so embarrassed, I'm so different. And I never thought that someday that would be gold to me at the time, and you don't when you're a child. And when you can embrace it and own it, that's why I think our Italian themed shows are something that a lot of people can relate to, because we all, I think, have that stuff growing up. But I think it's just very rich. It's real.
It's real.
It's real. That's the secret. It's real.
That's the identification, the gift that you have. But before we go into Anthony, I want to talk to you, Anthony, but I just want to, we keep using the word Italian-American. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you're aware where that comes from. African-American, Italian-American. A lot of people don't realize that came from Joe Colombo, who was the boss of the Colombo family. Mm-hmm. Back in the late 60s, when on television, all the Italians were playing on guns, the Untouchables and this and that. Right. They would call it Guinea Gunsmoke. And, Italians were always cast as gangsters. Yeah. So here this gangster started the Italian-American League. And he was one that was shot I was there the day he was shot at the rally at Columbus Circle in '71. But he's the one that started that. So there's a lot of people don't realize they're running around calling themselves African American, this American.
Right.
It all comes from Joe Colombo, one of the godfathers of the Colombo family.
Well, it's interesting because growing up in Canada, we never said we were Italian Canadian.
No.
Ever. You know what we said?
No one
we
ever
were?
did.
I'm Italian.
Yeah.
My nephew is 21. He just went in to meet with somebody for work. And the guy said, "So tell me a little bit about yourself." And I always said to him, "Don't talk about, talk about your culture, your stuff." And he said, the first thing I say to people when they say, tell me a little bit about yourself, he goes, well, I'm Italian.
That's what I
Yeah.
That's what I say.
But
I
in
never say I'm
Canada-
Italian American.
But in Canada, they get upset when people say that they are their ethnicity. They want people to say they are Canadian because that's what they are. But I think it's an interesting way of. It's a given that I'm Canadian. That's how I feel. It's a given that I'm Canadian. But what you don't know is that I'm Italian. So that's why when people say to me, "What are you in Canada?" You always say what your ethnicity is.
But that's where it comes from. It comes from Joe Colombo.
People look at me, they know I'm Italian.
Well, yeah, but
okay, I don't have to tell them.
well, they never take me. I never get cast
No.
as an Italian wise guy, and yet I was arrested by the 7-Ups. I don't know if you ever saw the movie. It was about an Italian crime task force in the Bronx. They went after wise guys, and you would get 7 years and up. That's why they called them the 7-Ups. My friend Richard Lynch that was his first starring role, and we became good friends. And he used to laugh because I said, "Those are the guys that got me, sent me. When I was in prison, they set me up." And it was funny. You talk about Italians and this and that. When I was in the joint, I always remember the black guys would always call the Puerto Ricans, the Orientals, the whites, and then there's the Italians. We were like a breed by ourselves, all that. But that's where it comes from. And before Joe Colombo started the Italian American League, everyone never said I was an Italian.
Yeah, you were Italian.
Italian,
you were
German,
Italian, right?
Yeah.
Jewish.
That's
But
it.
that's where it all comes from.
Yeah, I
So-
guess you don't really hear German Americans.
No.
But they do, today they do say it.
Today, I'm
Not much.
You know what you
Greek
hear?
American.
You hear he's an
Really?
American of Filipino descent.
Sense, yeah.
That's what you
it.
hear, but we just go Italian
Italian.
American.
Well, I guess because Italians are proud people. I guess.
Well, we are the
Italian,
proudest
we're
people that
Italian,
I know of.
You know.
And we should be. Because we invented everything. Anything that's good, we did it.
I understand. The Renaissance was very good for Italy.
Even, do you know where the stage came from?
The Commedia dell'arte, that
The
time period.
stage, the theater stage. It comes from Italy. The theater comes from Greek.
The Greek, yeah.
But the stage came from Italy.
Oh.
And Eleanor Ducey, And I just found out the other day, I was watching Nightingale, the nurse. She was Italian. I didn't know that. She was born in Italy.
Oh, Florence. Yeah.
Oh,
I
well,
guess,
that would
I
make
guess
sense.
yeah, that
Yeah,
makes
she
sense.
was. I was watching it on
That
China
would
Classic.
make sense.
So, Anthony, what got you started?
I was sitting here thinking about that while Dina was talking, and I want to say that my earliest memory at this moment in time, my parents had to go to a wedding. Now, my mother was an executive in New York City in the 50s, and she saw a lot of Broadway during the heyday of Broadway. And I don't know how young, first time we had a babysitter, and she said, "Oh, there's a great movie on TV tonight. I want you to watch it, South Pacific." And so I watched it. I'm going to tell you I'm probably 4 years old at this time, but I absolutely loved it. And then the next time they had to go to something, The Music Man was on. So, my mother introduced me to this because she had seen all of these shows in the original Broadway, productions. But it wasn't until I was 12 years old, we had moved to Florida, and we went back to New York in June to go home. My cousin Maria took my brother and I to see Godspell on Broadway. It was the original Broadway production. So I'm talking 72, I want to say, 73. And I walked out of that theater and I said, that's what you're going to do the rest of your life. Yeah. I just was so in love with it. The obstacle in my life was I had been told I could not sing. I remember being in Catholic school, and the 5th graders were singing for the 6th grade confirmation, and 3 of us had to sit in study hall because we were told we were tone deaf, we had no voices. So I sat while they all got out of, to go rehearse for everything, and we sat there. My father used to tell me to go sing in the toilet because you can't sing. His whole family could sing. They grew up, they all knew every word to every Italian aria, and I heard this my whole life. And I said, nobody's going to tell me I can't sing. And at 16, I got my car, and I was working on my Eagle Scout project. And a woman, where I was doing it at the Central Florida Speech and Hearing Center, her father was president of the Lakeland Little Theater, the community theater, and she says, "Oh, they're auditioning for South Pacific. They need men." And I'm like, really? know nothing. I go to the theater. I don't, anything. I open my mouth. I start singing something, whatever it was, a cappella, and I got cast in the show. And I met this woman who gave voice lessons, and they were $5 an hour. And I said, I'm going to start studying with you. And from that point on, I must have I did 6 shows maybe within all the community theaters, because where I lived there in Central Florida, there were about 5 community theaters within an hour radius of each other. And I was and I started getting leads. I mean, all of a sudden I was cast, and then I started doing the college shows, and I was getting cast, And, it just sort of evolved. But I attribute where I got my vocal abilities. I was very fortunate where I went to college that Beverly Wolf, whom you may or may not know, her claim to fame was Julius Caesar at the Met. She was a mezzo-soprano opera singer. She performed opposite Beverly Sills in her heyday. Retired. Her husband was from the town where I went to college. And they moved back home, and she said, "Oh, I'm retired now. Let me see if they need somebody to teach some voice at the college. It would give me something to do." And she took on a handful of students, of which I was one. And I had a voice, but she taught me how to sing.
How to breathe.
And everything. I remember she would hold a candle in front of me, or I would have to hold the candle. And if the candle went out, I was using too much air. It was just, it was like a very old school way of training. And one of the things people say, your instrument is like a horse. You can sing and sing and sing and sing and sing. And I hear people, "Oh, my voice is tired." I don't understand that. But I was trained old school.
Old school.
Old school. You can get up, you could sing, you can hit that last seat in the balcony, with any note that you need to do it with, because it's old school. So I attribute it with Beverly Wolf. But it's sort of just, I guess I always knew, and I love the stage, and I am a very musical person. I'm equally apt at any other form. I've done voiceovers, I've worked in movies and television, and I can do the whole spectrum. But musical theater, comedy is where my heart lies. And that's why this ended up becoming a one-man musical.
And it's almost like you should be in New York.
I should be in New York. And there's a whole section of what my life was like in New York, which is quite entertaining as well. But, I met my wife. Moved to Chicago to pursue her. We had 3 children. I was working, but I was having to go away to work. In fact, I think what really made the decision, my wife was pregnant with our 3rd child, and I took a job working for Disney on the cruise ships. And, I created roles in 3 of their musicals on the Disney Wonder when it first came out. And I said, I can't be away. I had a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and another one on the way. And but they were on the ship with me. They were on, I want to say, 17 cruises, which worked out really nice. Yeah, it worked out really nice. I got a very lucky deal from Disney back then. They don't do that anymore. But after my wife was 6 months pregnant, they wouldn't let her on anymore. And I said, I need to be home for the birth. I said, I think I have to stop being on the road. I just can't do this anymore. It's not easy for her to travel. We got a new one. And that's when I sort of made the decision that, I wasn't going to go out and work wherever I got work anymore. I had to do something else. Started a business in Chicago. It went well. Things changed. And the opportunity presented itself to come back out to California, or to move, period. And so we spent a summer in LA, we spent a summer in New York, and we spent a summer in Florida. Florida, in my opinion, was not a possibility at all, but her family is down there. I had to let my wife and kids be happy. And none of them wanted to live in New York, besides me.
Really?
None of them wanted to live in New York. And so LA won out, and I said, well, it doesn't matter, New York or LA, I can still have a career. And we ended up in LA.
Huh. It's worked out for you.
Yeah, it's been 9 years now we're back here. 9 years, wow.
9 years.
Yesterday, yeah.
And there was something and how did you 2 meet?
Well, we met at Theater West. That's what brought us together, and it was through this mutual friend who basically saved me one night when I needed somebody to read my play, my full-length play Moose on the Loose, and Anthony came and read a part. So
that's the part he
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the part that she cut out of the play.
yeah, he came in. I think it was a priest.
It was a priest.
It was a priest and coming to
Father
visit an
Rodolfo,
Italian
I think.
family.
Was his name
Yeah,
Rodolfo?
yeah. No, that was like the
Rodolfo.
grandfather. It was
the grandfather.
Father. I forget his Ricardo. I can't remember.
Ricardo, something
But
with an R.
he was playing the priest,
Yeah.
and then the priest got cut out.
Because all Italian families have a priest.
Back in those days, yeah, even Father
We still
Gigante.
got one, Father Vitro. Okay.
Well,
we
the
still
priest
have
used to
one.
come to my grandmother and grandfather's house for coffee, and my grandmother was very religious and went to church every single morning, even in minus 40 Celsius. She walked up the hill to go to St. Anthony's Church. She baked bread for the priest. She fixed the altar. It was really, my grandfather, he was not that kind of guy, but you know.
That's true.
That's
we were,
usually the case. It's the
we
mother
were
and
brought
the
up to
father.
respect the priest. You always bowed your head. And the nuns, even though they give you a beating,
Yeah.
you always had a respect. But that's something that seems to be gone today, respect in this country.
I'm not going to disagree with that.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
And I have issues with that today with my children's friends. And I said, you know what? They can come and go as they please, but if they come into the house, they have to say hello to us.
Yes.
I mean,
Respect.
I don't think that's wrong of me.
It's called respect.
If they're coming in the house, everybody comes in and says hello. They leave, they say goodbye. That's all I'm asking. It's not like I'm asking for much, but, this is my house. You're welcome here. You want something to eat, you want something to drink. But the least you can do is say hello.
Yeah.
And my kids don't understand, well, nobody else's parents make us do that. I said, I'm sorry, it's not how I was raised. It's
Well,
not how I was raised.
You
I
speak.
was raised, if you went in, and if it was a family function, it didn't matter, or if you were already there. Whoever came into the door, you had to go and greet. And if your grandparents were there, your grandmother was there, you went right to your grandmother before you said hello to anybody else. You greeted your grandmother, and then you had to go to all your aunts and all your uncles and all your cousins. And the first 40 minutes was saying hello to people before you could go and hang out with your cousins and play. Okay, it's what you did. And then at the end of the night, the same thing happened. I call it the Italian goodbye. Okay, we're leaving, and 2 hours later, you finally get out the door because you have to say goodbye to everybody.
Well, when we were growing up, we would have to, we would go to visit ladies with my mother or couples, their friends. And it was such fear because you had to sit and just wait. They would have their conversation and you would just sit. And then they would pass the chips around and you would take a potato chip. And unless they passed it to you, you couldn't just go like this. And then they would offer you something, usually a little liqueur. I don't know if you guys had liqueur, but they would offer us like an amaretto or a little, Coca-Cola or something, whatever. But I remember we had to just sit there and wait. And now, when I go out with my friends who have small children or children, it's all about their children.
Yeah.
It's like, tell them what you did. Yeah. Tell them about this. You'll be having a conversation, and then we went to whatever. Yeah. And they'll be like, look, I just made this. And then everything has to stop and you have to and I think it's so wonderful, but it's really interesting how, one may have been extreme when we were little, but this was their time. This wasn't our time. Yeah. This was their visit.
Yes. We were seen but not heard.
Yeah.
And if you did interrupt and you did say something, you didn't hear about it then. I would get a look from my father.
Yeah.
You'd get a look and you knew, you better not say another word. And you'd pray that he would forget you did that because you would get it when bada boom, right in the head when you got home or out the minute you were out of sight. You'd get smacked for doing what you did. And half the time you didn't even remember what you did. You just knew you did something because you got the eyes.
Yeah. It also, when you're talking about that, I remember dating. And when you were now an Italian girl, I would have to go between the whole family, starting with the grandmother, and everybody would have to approve. They would always say, why don't you join the army first or something? Come back after you've been in the service.
Yeah.
Now what? Who would say that now?
Yeah, they won't.
Can you imagine?
My wife gets mad at me. She says, why? I said, because... why aren't they bringing them home? I said, I don't know. I was taught you don't bring home anybody until you're going to marry them. She says, well, this is a different world today. I want to know who my kids are with, period, okay? And I'm like, okay, but, it was a different world. And I said, so if he doesn't come home with them, I'm okay with that right now. But she's not. Not at all.
But it is true, yeah. You got married. That's why when I used to work on Gary Gilmore from the Executioner song, I mean, he had this great line in there about, with women, girls. you got to tell them if you want to have sex with them, you got to tell them, I'll marry you or I love you.
Yeah.
Today, thank God you don't have to do that.
Yeah, you just got to blink your eyes. It's a different world.
Are you breathing? Okay.
Yeah,
It's okay.
okay.
Yeah. But years ago, you had to do that. I mean, I think that's why I always liked older women. It's probably the reason, I didn't.
Maybe.
I always went out with older women. Didn't have to go through the games.
No.
I love you. Yes.
It is. But it's, again, we're laughing about it, but it was a different world.
Oh yeah.
And I don't believe we had as many problems when I was growing up as the world seems to have today. I don't remember any of the things that were going on like we have to deal with now.
Well, we
what your
don't have
kids
the
to
media,
deal with it. And I guess it is the media.
Because I was talking about the other day. I grew up in the South Bronx, and I remember in the late 40s. I remember 47, 48. I never remember hearing about World War II. Never heard of it. I never knew about football until I knew about baseball. But I never knew about football until I was in reform school in 1951. I never heard of it. Nobody watched TV. I mean, we had a TV, we watched cartoons, but you didn't have the media. We played out in the street. I was gone all day playing with all the kids in the neighborhood, which you don't have today. Kids don't play anymore. So it was a different world. I'm not saying it was better. I think the kids today got it much better.
Well, I don't know that they have it much better, but they play together, and this drives me absolutely crazy. They'll get their friends to come over, okay? And one will be in the living room, one will be in the bedroom, one will be in the other bedroom, the other one will be in my daughter's room, the other's in the room. And they're all playing with each other on the stupid games, but none of them are in the same room, and they got the headsets on, and I'm like, why'd you bother to come over? You could do this from your house. Yeah. I don't understand it. Well, we're together, we're playing. I says, you're not even in the same room.
There's a play in there somewhere.
Yeah, maybe there's something, I don't know. But it drives me absolutely crazy, And we do attempt to play board games when everybody's home. We try to, we'll try to do it, we'll find a game, everybody likes it, we'll play it for a while. And it's so funny because some of these kids will come over to the house, we're in the middle of the game, and they'll sit there what are you guys doing? They'll just sit there and watch us because they're used to watching people playing video games until the game is over.
Texting.
It's like, do you want to play? No, I don't know how to play like that. And I just don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it. But
what about you?
I'm old-fashioned.
What about you?
I don't have children, so I don't have that particular problem, but I think that it is interesting. I was thinking about when I was growing up in my family, and it was an event to watch something on television.
Oh, yeah.
It was an event.
It was one TV.
It was one TV and...
One TV, one phone.
One phone?
One phone. And there was no answer machine. You would let it ring 20 times. Somebody always got it eventually, okay?
And everything was an event. The Olympics are on.
Yeah.
And it was an event. We were all going to watch it together. If there was a musical show on, some kind of show.
Colgate Hour and all of those.
Whatever.
Well, even like the King family for Christmas time, I mean, Andy Williams' Christmas special. We all watched it. We watched together.
But now the taste of the children and your nieces, nephews, kids, it's not the same because they have so much more that they can be watching YouTube, they can be on their phones, they could be watching movies, they could be playing games. And so we had this one thing to watch. It was the Christmas special. It was the Santa Claus parade. It was the Olympic ceremony, whatever it was. It was a major, singer performing on television. We all gathered around and watched it. That's not really the way things are anymore. No. Kids have access to whatever they want now. They don't need that family time. We still sit around. When I go back to Canada, we still wait for everybody to show up for dinner. We don't do, that kind of, and I know a lot of times my brother and I will joke and we'll say, this isn't takeout. This isn't McDonald's. You want to eat here? You got to be here to eat at, X
certain
hour.
time, yes.
You don't just show up and go, can I eat
Yeah,
now?
yeah, no.
All right, I just want to give you, when your show is playing again, we got about 30 seconds.
Okay. The Face Behind the Face Behind the Face, November 29th and 30th at 8 p.m., December 1st at 2 p.m. at Theater West, 3333 Cahuenga Boulevard, Los Angeles.
And the
I hope to
producer
see
will
you
be there.
And Dina's my
Dina,
producer.
I'm the producer. I will be there. There's free parking across the street, and we have some nice restaurants in the neighborhood. And it's Thanksgiving weekend, well, just after Thanksgiving, so come and check it out.
And I want to thank both of you for coming aboard.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.